Somebody's daughter is dying, and all of you are holding phones. Put them down and help me, or God help me, I will never forgive a single one of you. A homeless girl dropped to her knees on the frozen sidewalk, pressed her trembling hands against a stranger's chest, and began fighting for a life that everyone else had already given up on. Around her, a dozen people lifted their phones instead of their hands. Nobody moved. Nobody knelt. Nobody cared except the one girl the whole town had spent a year pretending not to see. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her arms were shaking. And she had no idea the girl beneath her hands belonged to one of the most feared brotherhoods in the country. If a story about kindness, courage, and the family we choose still means something to you, please subscribe and stay with me all the way to the end, and comment the name of the city you're watching from so I can see just how far Emily's story has traveled tonight. The scream came first. It cut through the cold morning air outside the Maple Street coffee shop, sharp and high and terrible, and every single person on that sidewalk froze the way people freeze when something is about to go very wrong. A teenage girl in a wool coat had been standing near the door 1 second. The next, she was folding knees, buckling, arms going loose. Her paper cup of hot chocolate hitting the ground and splashing across the ice as her body dropped, like the strings holding her up had all been cut at once. Oh my God. Somebody, she just fell. Is she okay? Is she breathing? Nobody answered, because nobody stepped forward. A crowd formed the way crowds always form, in a loose, useless half circle, close enough to see, far enough to feel safe. A man in a suit lifted his phone. A woman beside him did the same. Then 2 teenagers, then a jogger. Within seconds, there were more cameras raised than hands, and the girl on the ground wasn't moving. Across the street, half hidden in the doorway of a shuttered pawn shop, a 17-year-old girl with dirty blonde hair and an oversized jacket had been watching the whole thing. Her name was Emily Carter. She had been standing in that doorway for the better part of an hour, out of the wind, small and still and invisible, which was exactly how she liked it. She had learned over 11 months of living on the streets of this town that invisible was safe. Invisible meant nobody bothered you. Invisible meant nobody chased you off or spit near your feet or told you to get a job like you hadn't been begging for one for a year. Invisible meant nobody could hurt you. But now she was staring at a girl on the ground who had stopped moving, and a crowd of grown adults who were doing nothing but filming, and something in Emily's chest broke loose. Get up, a voice in her head told the crowd. One of you, any of you, she's dying, and you're recording it. Not one of them moved. Emily's mother had a saying. She'd said it 100 times before the cancer took her, before the world fell apart, before Emily learned what the word guardian could really mean. Baby, you might not have much, but you will always have the choice to help. And the day you stop making that choice is the day you stop being my daughter. Emily hadn't had much for a very long time, but she still had that. She ran. She didn't decide to run, her legs just moved. Across the frozen street, through a gap in the crowd, shoving past a man who said, "Hate," and a woman who stepped back with a look of open disgust as the smell of a girl who hadn't showered in a week reached her. Emily didn't care. She dropped to her knees on the ice beside the fallen girl. Hey, can you hear me?" Her voice came out cracked and hoarse. She hadn't spoken out loud in 2 days. "Come on, look at me. Open your eyes." Nothing. The girl's face was going gray. Her lips had a bluish tint. Emily pressed 2 fingers to the side of her throat, the way she'd been taught, the way her mother had taught her on a rainy Sunday afternoon in a kitchen that didn't exist anymore. Nothing. No pulse. No breath. For 1 single second, Emily's whole body went cold, and it wasn't the January air. Then her training took over. "Somebody call 911, she shouted, and her voice, this small, ignored, throwaway voice, suddenly filled the whole street. "Now, right now, tell them cardiac arrest, teenage girl not breathing, oh!" The crowd flinched, but the phone stayed up. "Are you serious?" Emily's voice broke. She looked up at all of them, at the suits and the coats and the recording faces. "Somebody's daughter is dying, and all of you are holding phones. Put them down and help me, or God help me, I will never forgive a single one of you." A woman in the back finally lowered her camera and started dialing. It wasn't enough. It wasn't nearly enough. But it was a start. Emily turned back to the girl. She laced her fingers together, positioned the heel of her palm in the center of that motionless chest, and locked her arms. "Don't you die on me," she whispered. "Don't you dare." And she began. Chana. The first compression sent a jolt up through her exhausted arms and into her shoulders. The second one hurt worse. By the fifth, her muscles were already screaming because Emily Carter had not eaten a real meal in 3 days, had slept maybe 4 hours the night before curled in a stairwell, and weighed less than 100 pounds soaking wet. 1, 2, 3, 4. She counted under her breath the way her mother had drilled into her. Push hard, push fast, don't stop. Come on, she gasped. Come on, come on. A man's voice close, uncertain. Kid, you sure you know what you're... I know what I'm doing, Emily snapped without looking up. Time it for me. Count out loud so I keep in my hands, so I keep the rhythm. Can you do that? Can you do one thing? There was a stunned pause. Then the man crouched down beside her, and in a shaking voice he started counting. 1, 2, 3. Something in Emily loosened just slightly. She wasn't completely alone anymore. Good, she breathed. Keep going. 30 compressions. She tilted the girl's head back, pinched her nose, sealed her mouth over hers, and breathed. Once. Twice. The chest rose. She went back to the compressions. Her arms were on fire now. Sweat had broken out across her forehead, despite the cold freezing almost the second it appeared. Her vision swam at the edges of gray, spotty darkness, that she recognized the darkness that came when her body was running on nothing. Not now, she told herself. You can faint after. Not now, not now. 28, 29, 30. The man counted. Emily breathed for the girl again. Nothing changed. Come on. Her voice cracked all the way through. Please, 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 I don't even know your name. Please don't do this. A woman near the front started to cry. Somebody said, it's been too long. Somebody else said, the ambulance. And Emily heard distant and getting closer the first thin wail of a siren. Too far. Still too far. She pressed harder. Faster. Every compression took something out of her she didn't have to give. Kid, the man beside her said quietly, you're going to hurt yourself. Then I'll hurt myself. Emily didn't stop. Her arms buckled, and she locked them again through sheer stubbornness. I am not losing another... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. The words another person were already there, hanging in the frozen air over a girl she had never met, and everyone close enough to hear understood something about the ragged, homeless teenager on her knees that they hadn't understood a minute ago. She had lost people before, and she had decided somewhere deep down where nobody could see that she was done, letting the world take them without a fight. The siren was almost on top of them now. Emily could see the flashing red light bouncing off the coffee shop window, and then under her hands the smallest thing. A twitch, a hitch in the chest. And then all at once the girl on the ground made a horrible, wonderful sound, a ragged, gasping, choking gulp of air, the sound of a body dragging itself back across a line it had already crossed. She's breathing, the man beside her shouted. Oh my God, she's breathing. She's back. The girl's eyes fluttered, rolled, focused just barely on the dirty, exhausted, tear-streaked face hanging over hers. Hey, Emily whispered, and now she was the one crying, and she didn't even know when she'd started. Hey, there you are. Stay with me, okay? Stay right here. You're okay. You're gonna be okay. What? The girl breathed. What happened? You just took a nap in the worst possible place, Emily said, and a laugh broke out of her half-sob. You scared the whole street half to death. Don't do that again. The girl's hand found Emily's wrist, weak, but holding on. Don't go, she whispered. I'm not going anywhere, Emily said. I promise. I'm right here. And then the paramedics were there, two of them dropping down with their bags, and hands were moving Emily gently but firmly to the side. We've got her, sweetheart. You did good. Let us in. And the world was suddenly full of professionals and equipment and shouted numbers. Emily sank back onto her heels on the freezing ground, and only then did she realize she was shaking so hard she could barely stay upright. You did that, the man who'd counted for her said. He was staring at her like he'd never seen anything like her. You saved that girl's life. You know that. You actually... He stopped. His voice cracked. How does a kid like you even know how to... My mom was an EMT, Emily said quietly, watching the paramedics work. She taught me. Where's your mom now? Emily didn't answer. She just kept watching the girl breathe. And that was the moment the crowd began to change. Because a minute ago, she'd been nothing to them. A smell, a problem, a thing to step around, and now they were looking at her the way you look at someone who has just done the bravest thing you've ever seen a person do, and half of them couldn't meet her eyes because half of them were still holding the phones that had recorded themselves doing nothing at all. "Somebody get her a blanket," a woman said. "She's freezing." "Is she hurt?" "She's homeless." "Somebody does she need?" Emily heard all of it, and none of it reached her. She'd learned long ago not to trust the way people talked about her when they suddenly felt guilty. It never lasted. By tomorrow, she'd be invisible again. She always was. She started to push herself up off the ground. "Whoa, whoa, hey." A paramedic caught her arm. "Where do you think you're going?" "I'm fine." "You are not fine. You're about to pass out, and you're gray as a sidewalk. Sit down. We're going to check you out, too." "I don't have insurance," Emily said flatly. "I don't have anything. I'm fine. Take care of her." And she pulled her arm free gently because she didn't want to fight. And she stood up on legs that barely held her, and she pulled her oversized jacket tighter around herself, and she started to walk away. That was what she always did. She helped, and then she disappeared before anyone could ask her a single question she didn't want to answer. She made it 4 steps. "Wait." The girl's voice, the girl she'd saved, cracked out weak but clear from the stretcher. "Wait, please. What's your name?" Emily stopped. She almost didn't turn around. Every instinct she had, every hard lesson of the last 11 months told her not to turn around. Names were dangerous. Names were how people found you. Names were how you got attached to a place, a person, a moment. And Emily had learned the hard way that everything she got attached to, she lost. But the girl was looking at her, and her hand was reaching out. And she just felt this girl's heart start beating again under her own 2 palms. Emily turned around. "Emily," she said. "My name's Emily." The girl on the stretcher smiled, faint and exhausted and grateful past words. "I'm Samantha," she whispered. "Sam, thank you, Emily. Thank you." "Get some rest, Sam." And Emily walked away into the cold one more time, disappearing down an alley the way she always did, with no idea, none at all, that she had just done something that could not be undone. Because Samantha Walker was not just some girl on a sidewalk. Samantha Walker was somebody's daughter. And her father was a very particular kind of man. Dwayne. The hospital called Ryan Walker at 8:47 that morning. He was in the garage of his shop with grease up to his elbows and a wrench in his hand, and when his phone buzzed against the workbench and he saw the word hospital on the screen, his whole body went cold before he even picked it up. He answered on the first ring. "This is Ryan. Mr. Walker, this is Mercy General. We have your daughter Samantha here." The wrench hit the concrete floor with a clang he didn't hear. "Is she alive?" It wasn't a question. It came out of him low and flat and absolutely terrifying, the voice of a man holding himself together with both hands. "Tell me right now, is my daughter alive?" "She's alive, sir. She's stable. She had a cardiac event. We think it may be related to an undiagnosed heart condition, and I want to be honest with you, it was very serious. But she's going to be okay." Ryan closed his eyes. He put one greasy hand flat against the workbench and just breathed for a second because the room had tilted and he needed it to stop. "How?" he said. "How is she okay? What happened?" "Sir, honestly, she's alive because a bystander started CPR immediately and didn't stop until we arrived. Whoever it was kept her heart going for almost 6 minutes. Without that, the nurse didn't finish. She didn't need to. You should know your daughter was very, very lucky someone stepped in." Ryan was already moving out of the garage, grabbing his keys, his jacket, his whole body running on pure adrenaline. "Who?" he said into the phone. "Who did it? Who saved my daughter?" "That's the thing, Mr. Walker. Nobody knows. There were witnesses, but the person who did the CPR, she left before anyone could get her name. Your daughter's asking for her. She keeps saying one name. Emily." Ryan Walker stopped dead in the doorway of his shop. "Emily," he repeated. "That's all we've got. Just Emily." 20 minutes later, Ryan came through the doors of Mercy General like a storm, 6'3" of leather and muscle and terror, and every nurse in the hallway stepped aside without being asked. When he reached his daughter's room and saw her pale, hooked up to machines, but awake alive, looking at him, a sound came out of him that he would have been embarrassed by any other day. "Dad?" Sam whispered. He crossed the room in 3 steps and took her hand in both of his massive ones, like it was the most fragile thing in the world. "Hey, baby," he said, and his voice was wrecked. "Hey, I'm here. I'm right here. You scared the hell out of me. You know that?" "I'm okay," she said. Then her eyes filled up. "Dad, Dad, I died. The doctor said my heart stopped. I was gone." "I know, baby, I know." There was a girl. Sam gripped his hand harder, urgent now, feverish. "Dad, there was this girl. She wouldn't stop. Everybody else was just standing there filming. Nobody helped me, and she ran across the street, and she got down on the ground, and she brought me back. I felt it. I felt her bringing me back." "I heard." Ryan brushed the hair off her forehead. "The nurse told me. Emily, right? Emily." Sam nodded fast. "Dad, we have to find her. We have to. You didn't see her. She was dead. She was homeless." Ryan went very still. "What?" "She had this huge jacket that didn't fit, and her sneakers were falling apart, and her hands," Sam's voice cracked. "Her hands were all cut up, Dad, before she even touched me. And she was so skinny. And she saved my life anyway. She almost passed out doing it. The paramedic said she probably hadn't eaten in days, and she still—" Sam couldn't finish. "And then she just left. She walked away like it was nothing. Like she didn't even think she deserved to stay." Ryan Walker looked at his daughter for a long moment, and something settled in his chest, something heavy and permanent. "You're telling me," he said slowly, "that a starving homeless kid was the only person on that whole street who lifted a finger to save my little girl?" "Yeah. And she didn't ask for anything. She didn't stick around for a reward, a thank you, a dime. She just did it and left." "Yeah, Dad." Ryan was quiet. He'd spent 30 years in a world that most people misunderstood. People looked at the patch on his back and the bikes in the lot, and they saw one thing: trouble. They never saw the other thing. They never saw the code. And the code was simple: you take care of the people who take care of yours. You don't leave anybody behind, and you never ever forget a debt. "Sam," he said quietly, "look at me." She looked at him. "We're gonna find her," Ryan said. "You understand me? That girl put your heart back in your chest with her own two hands. There is nothing I won't do to find her and make sure she never spends another cold night on a sidewalk as long as she lives. That's not a maybe, that's a promise. And you know, I don't break promises." Sam started to cry, the good kind, the relieved kind, and Ryan gathered her carefully into his arms, mindful of the wires and the tubes, and held his daughter, who was alive because of a stranger. Over her shoulder, his jaw set like stone. "Emily, wherever you are, kid, I'm coming to find you." Emily at that exact moment was 3 blocks away, sitting on the cold floor of a bus shelter, shaking. Not from the cold, well, partly from the cold, but mostly from the crash. It always hit her afterward. During an emergency, her body found something to run on. It always had. But the second the crisis passed, everything caught up at once: the hunger, the exhaustion, the terror, the memory of that girl's gray face and blue lips. Emily sat with her knees pulled up to her chest and her arms wrapped around them, and she pressed her face down and let herself fall apart for exactly 2 minutes. 2 minutes. That was the rule. She'd made it a long time ago. You can cry for 2 minutes. Then you get up and you keep going, because nobody is coming to help you, so you'd better be able to help yourself. When the 2 minutes were up, she wiped her face with the sleeve of her jacket, took a shaking breath, and looked at her hands. They were worse than usual. The knuckles had split open again during the compressions, old cuts reopening. She flexed them and winced. She's alive, though, Emily thought. Sam, she's alive. I did that. And for 1 second, one small, unfamiliar second, Emily Carter felt something she hadn't felt in almost a year. She felt like she mattered. Then she shoved the feeling down, because feelings like that were dangerous. Feelings like that made you soft, made you hope. And hope in Emily's experience was just disappointment that hadn't arrived yet. She hadn't always thought that way. Once she'd been a normal kid, a good student, a daughter with a mom who loved her fiercely and taught her CPR at the kitchen table. Because you never know, baby, and I want my girl to be the one who knows what to do. She'd had a home, a bed, a future, and then her mom got sick, and then her mom got sicker. And then 11 months and 2 weeks ago, her mom was gone, and a 16-year-old Emily Carter, she'd had a birthday since alone on a park bench, found herself standing in a lawyer's office, being handed over to a man she'd met exactly twice. His name was Gerald. He was a family friend, the lawyer said, named in her mother's paperwork as guardian in charge of Emily and of the money her mother had left behind, a small life insurance policy, the sale of the house, a college fund. Enough, if managed right, to give a grieving kid a fighting chance. Gerald had smiled a lot in that office, shaken the lawyer's hand, called Emily sweetheart, and promised he'd take good care of her. Emily's hands curled into fists at the memory, and the split knuckles stung. She didn't let herself think about Gerald if she could help it, about the locks that appeared on the outside of doors, about the money that vanished, about the way sweetheart turned into other words, about the winter night she'd finally climbed out a bathroom window with a backpack and $40 and run, and kept running and never once looked back because she'd figured out the truth that made her sick to her stomach. Gerald didn't want a daughter to take care of. Gerald wanted a girl who would disappear so that nobody would ever ask where the money went, and who was going to come looking for a dead woman's orphan, who was going to file a report about a homeless teenager nobody had ever really known. He'd bet everything on the same thing the whole world had bet on, that Emily Carter was invisible, that she didn't matter, that nobody would come. He had been right for 11 months. Emily pressed the heels of her hands against her eyes. "Stop," she whispered to herself. "Stop it. Get up. Move." She got up. She shouldered her backpack, and she stepped out of the bus shelter into the gray morning, because there was a church basement across town that sometimes gave out soup on Fridays, and if she walked fast, she might make it before the line ran out. She had no idea that at that very moment in a hospital room 3 blocks away, a man in a leather jacket was already writing down the only word he had: Emily. And Ryan Walker was a man who found people. By that afternoon, the story was moving. It moved the way stories move now, from a phone to an app to a screen to 100,000 screens. Somebody had posted the video. Of course somebody had. The exact video Emily had begged them not to film. 30 seconds of a ragged homeless girl on her knees in the ice, pounding on a stranger's chest, screaming at a crowd of grown adults to put your phones down and help me. The caption said, "Homeless teen saves girl's life while everyone else just filmed." It had 400,000 views by noon. By 3 o'clock, it had 2 million. The comments were a war. Half of them were ashamed. Why is no one helping her? Why did they all just stand there? Half of them were something else entirely. That's a real hero. This girl has nothing and did more than all of us. Somebody find her. Somebody take care of her. She deserves everything. Emily didn't see any of it. Emily didn't have a phone, but somebody else did. In the back room of a bar on the edge of town, a big man with a gray beard and a leather vest was watching that video for the 4th time, and his jaw was tight. His name was Michael Reynolds. Everybody called him Stone. And when Ryan Walker walked into that back room an hour later, still in the same grease-stained clothes he'd worn to the hospital, Stone stood up to meet him. "How's Sam?" Stone asked first, because that was the first thing you asked. "Alive," Ryan said. His voice was rough. "She's gonna be okay. Heart thing nobody knew about. They caught it, now they can treat it. She's alive, Stone." "Thank God." Stone gripped his forearm hard. "Thank God. You know why she's alive." Stone glanced at the phone on the table, at the paused video, at the frozen image of a skinny girl in a huge jacket. "I think I might." Ryan looked at the screen, and when he spoke again, his voice had changed. It had gone quiet in a way that men who knew him understood to be far more dangerous than shouting. "That's her," Ryan said. "That's the girl. That kid on the ground, that's the one who saved my daughter." He picked up the phone, looked at it. 2 million people watch this, Stone. 2 million people are calling her a hero right now from their couches. And you know how many of them are going to do a single thing about it. You know how many of them are going to find that kid tonight and make sure she's got a warm place to sleep. Stone said nothing. "None," Ryan said. "Not one. They'll cry about it and they'll scroll to the next thing. And tomorrow that little girl's going to be right back out in the cold hunger, alone, forgotten." His hand tightened around the phone. "The kid who wouldn't leave my daughter to die." The room was silent. "So what are you saying?" Stone said quietly, though he already knew. Ryan set the phone down. He looked his president in the eye. "I'm saying I made a promise to my daughter today," Ryan said. "I'm saying that girl is somewhere out there, right now, cold and hungry, and she doesn't know a single soul in this world gives a damn whether she lives or dies. And I'm saying I want to change that. Tonight. I want to find her. And when we find her, I want her to understand that she is not invisible anymore. Not to us, not ever again." He paused. "But that's a big ask, Stone. That's not just me, that's the whole club. So I'm not going to do it without you saying yes." Stone Reynolds looked at the paused video one more time, at the split knuckles, at the way that starving kid's whole body was locked in the fight to keep a stranger's heart beating. He thought about his own kids, about every kid. He thought about the code. And then Michael Stone Reynolds picked up his own phone and he started making calls, and the first thing he said into it was, "Brothers, listen up. We got a girl to find." Emily got the last cup of soup. The church basement had nearly run out, but a woman at the counter took one look at her cut-up hands and her gray face and quietly filled a bowl higher than she was supposed to. Emily said thank you twice and found a corner and ate slowly, making it last, warming her hands on the paper cup. For the first time all day, she let herself feel almost okay. Sam's alive, she thought again. Whatever else happens, whatever happens to me, that's real. That happened. I did one good thing today. She didn't need anyone to know. She'd never needed anyone to know. That was the whole point of the thing her mother taught her. You helped when nobody was watching, when there was nothing in it for you, when the person you helped would never even know your name. That's when it counts, baby. Anybody can be good with an audience. Emily finished her soup. She sat for a while in the warmth. And when the basement started closing up for the night, she pulled her jacket tight, shouldered her pack, and stepped back out into the dark toward the stairwell, where she'd sleep the same as every other night. She didn't hear it at first. Then she did. A sound low and far off and growing. A rumble. Not one engine, many, dozens. A deep rolling thunder that she felt in her chest before she understood it, rising up over the rooftops of the whole town, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Emily stopped in the middle of the empty sidewalk. She'd learned to be afraid of things she didn't understand. She'd learned that when the world got loud, it usually meant something was about to happen to her, and it was usually bad. Her heart started to pound. Her eyes went to the alley, the escape route, the way she always kept one ready. The thunder got closer. Headlights, then a river of them turning onto the far end of the street, one after another, more than she could count, filling the road from curb to curb. The rumble became a roar. It shook the windows. It shook the ground under her worn-out sneakers. Emily stood frozen small and alone in the middle of the sidewalk and watched a wall of motorcycles come pouring toward her out of the dark. And she had no idea, none at all, whether they were coming to save her or whether the worst night of her life was about to begin. She only knew one thing for certain, as that thunder rolled down on her and the whole cold street filled with light. They were coming for her. Orchestrated, seamless narrative continuation with rapid pacing, emotional depth, and strategic plot twists. Orchestrated, seamless narrative continuation with rapid pacing, emotional depth, and strategic plot twists. The motorcycles slowed. That was the first thing Emily noticed, and it terrified her more than the noise. Things that came at her fast, she could run from. But this wall of headlights was slowing down, spreading out, and the lead bike was drifting toward the curb, where she stood frozen and slow, meant deliberate, indeliberate meant for her. Her hand went to the strap of her backpack. Her eyes went to the alley. Run, every instinct screamed. Run now before they box you in. She took one step back. The lead bike stopped 10 feet away. The engine cut. And in the sudden ringing quiet, a big man in a leather vest swung his leg off the seat, took off his helmet, and held up both his empty hands where she could see them. "Easy," he said. His voice was low and rough and strangely gentle. "Easy, kid. Nobody here's going to hurt you. I swear that on my life. You hear me, nobody." Emily didn't move, didn't answer. Her heart was slamming so hard she could feel it in her throat. Behind the first man, engines were cutting off one by one, dozens of them, and the silence that replaced them was somehow louder than the roar had been. She was surrounded now, a ragged girl in the middle of a river of leather and steel, and she'd walked right into it, and there was no alley in the world she could reach in time. "My name's Ryan," the man said, still holding his hands up, still keeping his distance like she was a wild thing that might bolt. "Ryan Walker. I'm not going to come any closer than this unless you tell me it's okay. All right, I'll stand right here all night if that's what it takes." Emily's voice, when it came out, was barely a whisper. "What do you want?" "I want to say thank you," Ryan said. She blinked. "You saved a girl's life this morning," he said, "outside a coffee shop on Maple Street. Blonde girl wool coat dropped right on the sidewalk. You did CPR on her when nobody else would lift a finger. You kept her heart going till the ambulance came. You remember that?" Emily's throat closed. "How do you—" "Because that girl's name is Samantha," Ryan said, and his rough voice cracked right down the middle. "And she's my daughter, and she's alive tonight because of you." For a second, Emily couldn't breathe. She'd walked away that morning the way she always walked away, fast before the questions came, before anyone could get a name or a face or a hook into her. She had spent 11 months being a ghost, and now here was a man on a motorcycle in the dark telling her that the girl on the ground had a name and a father, and that the father had found her. The father had found her. "I didn't," Emily started and her voice shook. "I didn't do it for— I don't want anything. I don't need a reward. She was gonna die and nobody was helping, and you don't owe me anything. Please just let me go." Something moved across Ryan Walker's face. Something that looked for 1 second like it hurt him physically. "Let you go," he repeated softly. Kid, where are you gonna go?" Emily didn't answer. "It's 26 degrees out here," Ryan said. "You got a jacket 3 sizes too big and sneakers with the soles coming in. Your hands are all torn up." His eyes moved over her, careful and sad. "When's the last time you ate something real?" "I'm fine." "That's not what I asked." "I said I'm fine." It came out sharp, cornered, and Emily hated how her voice cracked at the end. "People say that a lot. Are you okay? Do you need anything?" They say it because it makes them feel better. And then they leave. So you can save it, okay? Just say your thank you and let me go, and we can both go back to pretending I don't exist. The silence after that was terrible. Emily stood there shaking, waiting for it, the sigh, the shrug, the turning away. She knew how this went. She always knew how this went. But Ryan Walker didn't turn away. Instead, he did something she didn't expect at all. He lowered himself down slow until he was crouched on the cold pavement, bringing himself below her eye level, making himself smaller than the terrified girl in front of him. "You're right," he said quietly. "People do say that, and most of them do leave. I'm not going to stand here and tell you the world's been kind to you because I can see with my own 2 eyes that it hasn't." He paused. "But I'm going to tell you something true, and I need you to really hear it." "You ready?" Emily said nothing, but she didn't run. "This morning," Ryan said, "a whole street full of grown adults watched my little girl die on the ground and did nothing but hold up their phones. Grown men, grown women, people with homes and cars and full stomachs and every reason in the world to help. And not one of them moved." His jaw worked. "And then a kid who's got nothing, a kid the whole town spent a year stepping over, that kid ran across the street on an empty stomach and put my daughter's heart back in her chest with her own 2 hands. He looked up at her. "So don't you dare stand there and tell me you don't exist," Ryan said, and his voice was thick. "You were the only one on that whole street who was real." Emily's eyes filled up before she could stop them. She turned her face away, furious at herself, because she did not cry in front of people. She'd trained herself out of it years ago, and here was this stranger cracking her open in the middle of the street with a couple of sentences. "I don't—" Her voice broke. She tried again. "I don't know what you want me to do." "I want you to let us feed you," Ryan said simply. "That's it. That's the whole ask right now. There's a diner 4 blocks from here, stays open all night, makes the best burger in this town. I want to buy you dinner, and I want you to sit across from me and eat till you can't eat anymore, and you don't have to tell me a single thing about yourself. If you don't want to, and after that, if you want to walk away, I will not follow you. You have my word." Behind him, one of the other bikers, an older man with a gray beard, spoke up low and steady. "He means it, kid. Ryan doesn't say things he doesn't mean. None of us do." Emily looked past Ryan at all of them. 40, 50, 60 faces in the dark, and not one of them was looking at her the way people usually looked at her, with pity or disgust or that quick, guilty flick of the eyes away. They were looking at her the way you look at somebody you respect. She didn't understand it. She didn't trust it. But she was so tired, and she was so cold, and she hadn't had a real burger in almost a year. "Just dinner," she whispered. "That's it. And then I go." "Just dinner," Ryan agreed. "And then you go if you want to. Cross my heart." Emily hesitated one more second. Then she nodded once, and something in the whole street seemed to exhale. She rode in the diner in a truck, not on a bike. Ryan saw her flinch at the idea of climbing onto a stranger's motorcycle and didn't push it, just called over a man named Tank, who had a pickup, and said, "Give the young lady a ride. She's not getting on anybody's bike tonight." And that small thing, that one small act of noticing what scared her, did more to lower Emily's guard than any speech could have. The diner was warm and bright and smelled like coffee and grease, and Emily sat in a corner booth with her backpack in her lap because she couldn't make herself put it down, and Ryan sat across from her and ordered like a man feeding an army. "2 burgers," he told the waitress. "Fries, onion rings, a milkshake, chocolate, okay, chocolate milkshake, and keep the hot chocolate coming." "That's too much," Emily said quietly. "Eat what you can. The rest goes in a bag and goes with you." When the first burger came, Emily meant to eat it slow, to be polite, to make it last. She lasted about 4 bites before her body took over, and she ate like she'd forgotten how to stop. And halfway through, she had to put it down because her eyes had blurred over again, and she was so ashamed of herself, she couldn't look up. "Hey," Ryan said gently. "Hey, look at me." She didn't. "There's nothing to be embarrassed about here," he said. "You hear me? Nothing. Eat. Cry if you gotta cry. There's not a person in this room who's judging you. Half the men in this club been hungry in their lives. Some of us been exactly where you are. You're safe, just eat." And something about the plain, flat truth in his voice, "some of us been exactly where you are," broke the last thing holding Emily together. She put her face in her hands and she cried. Really cried for the first time in longer than she could remember, not the rationed 2-minute kind, but the real kind, the kind that came up from somewhere deep and old and shook her whole body. And Ryan Walker didn't say a word and didn't touch her and didn't try to fix it. He just slid the box of napkins across the table and let her. When it finally passed, when she wiped her face and picked up the burger again with shaking hands, Ryan said very quietly, "Somebody hurt you real bad, didn't they?" Emily froze mid-bite. "You don't gotta answer," he said. "I already know the answer. I've seen it before. The way you keep that bag in your lap. The way you flinched when I got close. The way you can't take a nice thing without waiting for the catch." His voice was so gentle it hurt. "Somebody was supposed to take care of you, and instead they took everything you had. That's about the size of it, isn't it?" Emily set the burger down. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding. Every rule she'd ever made for herself was screaming, don't, he's a stranger. You don't tell people. Telling people is how they use it against you." But she looked up at Ryan Walker's face, at the leather vest, and the gray in his beard, and the way his eyes had gone wet, listening to her cry. And for the first time in 11 months, some small, starving part of her wanted more than anything to not carry it alone anymore. "His name's Gerald," she whispered. Ryan went very still. "After my mom died," Emily said, and her voice was barely there. She had a will. She named a guardian, a guy she used to know from before, I don't even really know how, Gerald. He was supposed to take care of me until I turned 18. He was supposed to, there was money, insurance, and they sold the house. It was supposed to be for me, for college, for a start. "What happened to it?" Ryan said, very quiet, very careful. "It's gone." Emily laughed a horrible cracked sound. "It's all gone. He put locks on the doors. On the outside, he'd tell people I was troubled, that I ran off all the time so nobody would believe me. He took my phone. Her voice failed. She pressed her lips together, and when she went on, it was almost too soft to hear. "He said nobody would ever come looking for me. He said I was nobody. He said the second I turned 18, he'd have all of it, and I'd have nothing, and there wouldn't be a thing I could do about it. And I believed him because he was right. Nobody came." She looked up. "I climbed out a window 11 months ago," she said, "with $40 in this backpack, and I've been running ever since because I figured out the truth. He doesn't want a kid he has to take care of. He wants me gone. He wants me to disappear so nobody ever asks where the money went." Her jaw trembled. And it worked. For almost a year it worked, because the whole world agreed with him. The whole world decided I was nobody too. The diner was very quiet. Across the table, Ryan Walker had not moved, but something had changed in his face. Something had gone cold and hard and terrible under the surface, the way still water goes hard right before it turns to ice. "What's his last name?" Ryan said. His voice was flat, level. And somehow that was the most frightening thing Emily had heard all night. Why, Emily? He leaned forward and he looked her dead in the eye and he said the words slowly and clearly so there could be no mistake. You are not nobody. You hear me. Whatever that man told you, it was a lie he needed you to believe so he could steal from a dead woman's daughter. And I promise you on my daughter's life, on everything I have, he is about to find out exactly how wrong he was. Emily stared at him. I don't, she started. You can't, it's fine. I just have to make it to 18 and then, how old are you right now? 17. So he's still your legal guardian. Ryan's voice was very soft and very dangerous. Which means right now, tonight, there's a man out there with a legal document that says he's responsible for you, and instead of taking care of you, he's got you sleeping in stairwells while he spends your mother's money. He sat back. No, we're not gonna just make it to 18. Not on my watch. You don't even know me, Emily whispered. Ryan looked at her for a long moment. I know you ran across a frozen street on an empty stomach to save a stranger's life when 60 people wouldn't, he said. That's all I need to know about who you are. The rest is just details. And then he pulled out his phone and he stood up from the booth and he walked toward the door of the diner. And Emily watched through the window as he made a call, and even from inside, even through the glass, she could see the way the man's whole body had changed. Loose and easy an hour ago. Coiled now. A man who had just found out something that had turned his whole night into something else. She didn't know it yet, but Gerald had just made the last mistake he would ever get to make. Yes, it did. Ryan came back inside a few minutes later, and he was not alone in his head anymore. Emily could see it. He slid back into the booth, but his eyes kept moving, thinking working. Eat, he told her again gently. You've barely made a dent. Who'd you call? A brother of mine, named Stone. He runs our club. Ryan wrapped both hands around his coffee. And I made a couple calls after that. You don't need to worry about any of it tonight. Tonight, all you gotta do is eat, and then we're gonna get you somewhere warm and safe to sleep. A real bed, not a stairwell. Emily's whole body tensed. I can't stay with someone not with me, not with anybody who scares you. Ryan was already shaking his head. There's a woman named Carol, Tank's wife. She's got a spare room and about the biggest heart of anybody I ever met, and she raised 4 girls of her own, and she is real good at not asking questions. You'll have your own room, your own lock on the inside where it belongs. And if you want to leave in the morning, nobody stops you. But at least you'll be warm tonight, he paused. Please, let us do this one thing. You put my daughter's heart back in her chest today. Let me put a roof over your head for one night. That's not charity. That's the smallest possible piece of what I owe you. Emily looked down at her half-eaten burger. She wanted to say no. Saying no was safe. Saying no was the thing that had kept her alive for 11 months. Every time she'd let herself hope, every time she'd let a person get close, it had cost her. But she was so tired of being cold. One night, she whispered. One night, Ryan agreed. And after that, it's your call, every step of the way. You decide. Nobody decides for you, not anymore. Nobody decides for you, not anymore. Something about those words hit Emily somewhere she hadn't been touched in a long time. Because that was exactly what Gerald had taken from her. Not just the money, not just the house. He'd taken her ability to decide anything at all. He'd made every choice for her, controlled every door, until she'd forgotten she was a person who got to want things. And this stranger in a leather vest had just handed it back to her like it was nothing. Okay, Emily said. And then so quiet, Ryan almost missed it. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Ryan's mouth tightened. We got a long road ahead, kid, but you're not walking it alone anymore. Carol was exactly like Ryan promised. She opened her door at midnight without a single question on her face, took one look at Emily and said, well, come on in out of that cold, sweetheart. You must be froze solid. And it was the ordinary warmth of it, the total lack of drama that finally let Emily's shoulders come down from around her ears. There was a real bed, clean sheets, a lock on the inside of the door, just like Ryan said. Carol left a folded stack of clean clothes and a towel outside the bathroom and told her to take as long a shower as she wanted. Hot water didn't cost extra, and then she was gone and Emily was alone in a warm room for the first time in 11 months. She locked the door. She checked it twice. Then she sat down on the edge of the bed and she looked at the clean sheets and the lamp and the window with actual curtains, and she started to cry again. But this time it was different. This time it wasn't grief. She didn't have a word for what it was. She showered until the water ran cold. She put on the clean clothes that smelled like laundry soap. And when she finally laid down in the bed under the blankets warm, she lay awake a long time staring at the ceiling, waiting for it to be taken away. Waiting for the catch. She fell asleep still waiting. And for the first time in almost a year, nobody came to hurt her in the night. Ryan Walker did not sleep at all. He sat in the back room of the club with Stone Reynolds and 3 other men until nearly 4 in the morning, and by the time the sun came up, the whole thing had a shape. His name's Gerald Hans, Ryan said, reading off a scrap of paper. Took me half the night, but I found the guardianship filing. It's real. Court appointed after the mother Diane Carter passed. He's got legal custody of that girl, and he's got control of an estate that should be worth a good chunk of money. Ryan's jaw was tight. Should be. On paper, there's almost nothing left. And there's not one record of a single dollar spent on Emily. No school, no doctor, nothing. Kid's been a line item he's been draining for a year. Stone was quiet for a moment. Anybody ever check on her social services school? Anybody? That's the part that turns my stomach. Ryan set the paper down. He reported her as a chronic runaway. Made a couple calls himself real early on, painted her as some troubled kid who kept taking off. So when she actually did run, there was already a story in place. Nobody looked hard. Why would they? On paper, she's just another teenage runaway who didn't want to be found. He looked up. He built the whole thing so that when she disappeared, it'd look like her fault. He was counting on her to disappear. He was counting on nobody caring enough to check. The room was silent. And she almost proved him right, Ryan said quietly. 11 months, not one person in this whole town lifted a finger. Until she saved my kid. Stone leaned back. He was quiet for a long time the way he got before he said something that mattered. You know what we're not going to do? Saw us to, Stone said finally. We're not going to ride over to this man's house and put our hands on him. Much as every part of me wants to. Because the second we do that, we become the story. We become the reason she doesn't get justice, and that man walks. I know, Ryan said. His hands were flat on the table. Believe me, I know. I sat in that diner listening to that kid tell me what he did, and I wanted to. He stopped himself, breathed. But you're right. We do this the way that actually saves her, the way that can't be undone. Which is, we make her unignorable, Ryan said. The whole reason he got away with it is she was invisible. So we make her the opposite. We get her a real lawyer. We get the money traced. We get the guardianship pulled and every dime accounted for. And we make so much noise doing it that not one judge, not one social worker, not one cop in this county can pretend they didn't see. He looked at Stone. That video's already got 3 million views. People already care. We take that and we point it right at the truth, and we don't let go until that girl has her life back. Stone studied him. That's a lot of resources, lawyers, time, money. For a kid none of us knew existed yesterday. Yeah, Ryan said. It is. Club money, club time. Every brother's going to have a say in that. I know. Stone let the silence sit for a moment. Then slowly a hard smile started at the corner of his mouth. Good thing I already asked him, he said, last night, while you were at the diner. Told the whole club the story. Told him about the girl who wouldn't leave your Sam to die. He shook his head. Ryan, I've never seen a vote go so fast in 30 years. Wasn't even a vote, really. Was just a room full of men saying the same word at the same time. Ryan's throat worked. What word? Yes, Stone said simply. The word was yes. Emily woke up to sunlight and the smell of bacon. And for one confused, terrifying second, she didn't know where she was. And then it came back, and she sat straight up in the bed with her heart pounding, and she looked at the door and saw the lock still turned, still safe, and she breathed. She'd slept 9 hours. She couldn't remember the last time she'd slept 9 hours. There was a soft knock. Emily, honey, you up? I got breakfast on. No rush, it'll keep. Emily got dressed in the clean clothes and unlocked the door with hands that only shook a little, and she came out into Carol's kitchen to find a plate already waiting eggs and bacon and toast and a glass of orange juice. and Carol bustling around like it was the most normal thing in the world to feed a stray teenager at her table. There she is, Carol smiled. Sit, eat before it gets cold. Emily sat. She ate. And she was 3 bites in when the front door opened and Ryan Walker came in, and behind him was a girl Emily almost didn't recognize out of context until she saw the wool coat and then her fork froze halfway to her mouth. Samantha. Sam looked pale, and there was a hospital bracelet still on her wrist, and she was moving carefully, but she was upright and walking and alive, and the second her eyes landed on Emily, her whole face crumpled. It's you, Sam whispered. It's really you. Emily stood up so fast her chair scraped. Should you even be out of the hospital? Are you okay? Is your heart? They discharged me this morning. I made my dad bring me straight here. Sam was crying now, walking toward her. I made him because I had to. I needed to see you. I needed to. And then Sam did something Emily wasn't ready for at all. She crossed the last few feet and threw her arms around Emily and held on hard and said into her shoulder in a voice that shook apart. You saved my life. You were dying yourself and you saved my life anyway. And then you just left. I didn't even get to. Emily stood there, stiff arms out to the sides, not knowing what to do with a hug because she couldn't remember the last time anyone had hugged her. And then slowly she brought her arms up and she hugged Sam back and she started to cry too. And the two girls stood in Carol's kitchen, holding on to each other, one who had died on a sidewalk and one who had brought her back, and neither of them let go for a long time. Ryan watched from the doorway. He had to look away and clear his throat. Okay, he said rough. Okay, enough of that. You two are going to get me started. Sit down, both of you. Emily, sit, eat your breakfast. Come on. He pulled out a chair. There's something I need to talk to you about, and I need you to hear all of it before you say anything. Can you do that? Emily wiped her face and sat back down slowly. That old wariness crept back in. Here it was, the catch. There was always a catch. What is it? She said. Ryan sat across from her, and Sam sat beside her, close to their shoulders touching. Last night, Ryan said, after you told me about Gerald, I made some calls. I did some digging. He laid the scrap of paper on the table. Emily, I found the court filing, the guardianship. It's real and it's still active, which means that man is still legally responsible for you. And I found the estate records too. Emily went very still. The money your mom left you, Ryan said gently. The insurance, the house, it was real. It was a good amount. Enough to take care of you and still have plenty left for school, for a future, everything she wanted for you. He paused. And it's almost all gone, Emily. Drained. And there's not one record, not one of him spending a dime of it on you. No doctor, no dentist, no school supplies, nothing. He's been living off your mother's money for a year while you slept on the street. Emily's face had gone white. I knew he took it. I didn't think anyone could ever. There's more, Ryan said, and his voice dropped. And this is the part I need you to hear. Real careful, okay? When you ran, he didn't report you missing like a scared guardian would. He reported you as a runaway, a repeat runaway. He'd already been telling people you were troubled, that you kept taking off, for months before you ever left. Ryan's jaw tightened. He built a story, Emily, ahead of time, so that when you disappeared, everybody'd just shrug and figure it was you. He set it up so nobody would look. The kitchen was silent. Emily stared at the scrap of paper on the table, and something was happening behind her eyes, the slow, sick understanding of just how carefully she'd been trapped. She'd thought it was cruelty, neglect. She'd never let herself understand that it was a plan, that the man had sat down and thought it through and engineered her disappearance like a business decision. He planned it, she whispered, the whole time. He wasn't just, he planned for me to vanish. Yeah, Ryan said quietly. He did. Emily's hands started to shake on the table. Sam reached over and took one of them. He almost got away with it, Emily said. Her voice was breaking. If I just walked past that coffee shop like everybody else, nobody would have ever, but you didn't walk past, Ryan said firmly. You stopped. And because you stopped, that man's whole plan is about to come apart. Because you're not invisible anymore, Emily. Not to me, not to my daughter, not to my brothers, not to the 3 million people who watched you save a life on that sidewalk. He leaned forward. He bet everything on nobody caring about you, and he bet wrong. Emily looked up, and her eyes were wet and scared and desperate to believe something she'd taught herself never to believe. Why, she said. It came out cracked, the same question that had been eating at her since the motorcycles first filled the street. Why would you do all this for me? You keep saying you owe me, but this is lawyers and digging up records, and this is huge, this is real, this costs real things, and I'm nobody to you. I saved one person one time, and you're acting like... Her voice failed. Why me? People don't do this, not for someone like me. There's always a catch, so just tell me. What's the catch? What do you actually want? Ryan Walker was quiet for a moment, and then he did something that Emily would remember for the rest of her life. He reached across the table slow, giving her every chance to pull away, and he put his big hand over hers and Sam's both. There's no catch, kid, he said. His voice was thick. I know you can't hear that yet. I know somebody made real sure you'd never be able to hear it, so I'm not going to waste my breath trying to convince you with words. I'm just going to show you. Every day, until you believe it. He squeezed her hand. But since you asked me why, I'll tell you the truth. You want the truth? Emily nodded barely. Because you helped my Sam when nobody was watching, Ryan said. When there was nothing in it for you. When you were the one who needed saving. That's not a small thing, Emily. That's the biggest thing there is. That's the whole thing. His eyes were wet now, and he didn't hide it. Where I come from, we got a word for people who do that. We call them family. And family doesn't leave family out in the cold. Not ever. Not for any reason. Emily broke. Everything she'd held together for 11 months, the hunger, the fear, the loneliness, the terrible cold, certainty that she was nobody and nobody would ever come. All of it came apart at once, and she put her head down on the kitchen table and sobbed, and Sam wrapped both arms around her, and Ryan kept his hand steady on her shoulder, and Carol quietly turned off the stove and pretended to need something in the other room so the girl could fall apart in peace. When it finally passed, Emily lifted her head, and her face was wrecked, and she looked at Ryan Walker through her tears. Okay, she whispered. Okay, Ryan said. Okay. Emily wiped her face with the back of her torn-up hand. Help me, please. I don't know how to... I've been doing this alone so long, I don't even know how to let somebody. But I'm so tired. I'm so tired of being alone. So please help me. Whatever it is, I'll try to believe you. I'll try. Ryan Walker smiled, and it cracked something open in his own face, and he stood up and came around the table and did the thing he'd been careful not to do since the moment he met her. He pulled her up out of the chair and wrapped her up in a hug, and Emily didn't flinch and didn't run and didn't wait for the catch. She just let herself be held. That's all I'm asking, kid, Ryan said into her hair. Just try. We'll do the rest. Over her shoulder, though, where Emily couldn't see Ryan, Walker's face changed again. The warmth stayed for his daughter and for the girl in his arms, but underneath it, something had gone to iron. Because somewhere across town, a man named Gerald Hans was waking up in a house he'd bought with a dead woman's money, believing the way he'd believed every morning for 11 months, that the girl he'd thrown away was gone for good, that the money was his, that no one was ever coming. He had no idea that everything had already changed. He had no idea that 200 people had just decided he was going to answer for every single thing he'd done. And he had no idea that the invisible girl he'd bet his whole plan on had finally, after 11 months in the cold, been seen. The lawyer's name was Patricia Vega, and she'd been practicing family law for 22 years, and she was not easily impressed. She was impressed by 10 in the morning. Ryan had brought Emily to her office downtown. Sam insisted on coming too, wouldn't hear otherwise, sat in the waiting room holding Emily's hand the whole time, and Patricia had cleared her entire morning, which she never did because Stone had called her the night before and said 7 words that got her attention. A kid needs help, and we're paying. Now she sat across her desk from a 17-year-old girl in borrowed clothes and listened, and the longer she listened, the tighter her jaw got. Say that part again, Patricia said. About the locks. Emily's hands twisted in her lap. On the outside of the doors, my bedroom. The he'd lock me in at night, said it was for my own good, so I wouldn't wander. Patricia wrote something down, her pen pressed hard into the pad. And the money, she said. You said there was insurance and the house sold. Do you know how much? I don't, not exactly, but it was a lot. My mom told me before she said I'd be okay. She said she made sure I'd be okay. She said there was enough for college and everything. Emily's voice wavered. But Gerald said it was gone. He said there had been expenses. He said I cost more than I was worth. Patricia stopped writing. She set the pen down and she looked at Emily over the top of her glasses for a long moment. And when she spoke, her voice had changed. It had gone quiet and precise in a way that made Ryan sitting in the corner sit up straighter. Emily, Patricia said, I want to be very clear with you about something, and I want you to really hear it because I don't think anyone said it to you plainly yet. She folded her hands. What you're describing to me isn't a bad guardian. It isn't a guy who made some mistakes with money. What you're describing is a crime. Several crimes: financial exploitation of a minor, fraud, unlawful restraint, possibly worse depending on what the records show. She paused. This man didn't fail you. He robbed you. And there are laws about that. Serious ones. Emily stared at her. But he said, Emily started and stopped. He always said there was nothing I could do, that it was legal, that he was my guardian and it was all legal. And if I ever tried to tell anyone, they'd just believe him because he was the adult and I was the troubled kid. And he lied, Patricia said flatly. That's what men like this do. They isolate you, they convince you the law's on their side, and they count on you never testing it. Because the second you test it, the second someone with resources actually looks, the whole thing falls apart. She leaned forward. And Emily, someone with resources is about to look very hard. For the second time in 24 hours, Emily felt the ground shift under everything she'd believed about her own life. Because Gerald hadn't just told her she was worthless. He'd told her she was trapped, that the law itself had locked the door. And she'd believed it the way she'd believed everything, because she'd been 16 and grieving and alone, and he'd been the only adult in the room. And it had all been a lie, every word of it. How long, Emily whispered, how long would something like this take to prove? Patricia was honest with her because Patricia was always honest. Cases like this can drag on months, sometimes longer. Guys like Gerald, they lawyer up, they stall, they hide assets. She saw Emily's face fall and held up a hand. But this one's got a few things going for it that most don't. She ticked them off. One, you've got a video with 3 million views, making you the most sympathetic witness in the state. Two, you've got a client with real resources behind you, so we're not going to run out of money before he runs out of stalling. And three, she almost smiled. Three, and in my experience, men who are this arrogant tend to be this sloppy. A man who's convinced no one will ever check does not cover his tracks carefully. I would bet money the evidence is sitting right there waiting for someone to subpoena it. So what do we do first? Ryan said from the corner. First, Patricia said, we file an emergency motion to remove Gerald Hans's guardian and freeze the estate accounts today before he can move another dollar. Then we get a forensic accountant on the money trail. Then we get the police involved on the criminal side because this is bigger than a civil matter. She looked at Emily. But I need to warn you about something, and I need you to be ready for it. The second we file, he's going to know, and he's going to fight. And the first thing a man like this does when cornered is attack your credibility. He's going to say you're a liar, a runaway, a troubled kid making up stories. Everything he preloaded for exactly this moment. Her voice softened. It's going to be ugly, Emily, and you're going to have to be brave in a way you haven't had to be yet. Can you do that? Emily was quiet. She thought about 11 months of stairwells. She thought about the church basement and the last cup of soup. She thought about Gerald's voice telling her she was nobody, that no one would come, that the law was his, and she had nothing. And she thought about a girl dying on a sidewalk and 60 people filming, and how she'd been the only one who moved. I've been brave for a year, Emily said quietly. Alone. This time I've got... Her voice caught. She looked at Ryan and at the door where Sam was waiting. This time I'm not alone, so yeah, I can do it. Patricia Vega looked at her for a long moment. You know, she said, I've been doing this 22 years, and I've met a lot of kids who got dealt a hand like yours. Most of them, by the time they get to my office, they're broken. Angry, checked out, can't blame them. She picked her pen back up. You're not. I don't know how after everything, but you're not. She started writing. Let's go get your life back, kid. Filing the motion took the rest of the day. Patricia moved faster than Ryan had ever seen a lawyer move. And by 4 o'clock that afternoon, an emergency petition sat in front of a judge, and the estate accounts were flagged, and a process server was on his way across town with an envelope that was going to blow up Gerald Hans's entire comfortable life. Emily didn't get to see his face when he opened it. She was back at Carol's sitting at the kitchen table, and she'd been quiet for an hour. And Sam, who refused to leave her side, who'd made her dad text the club that she was staying at Carol's tonight, finally nudged her. "Hey, where'd you go just now?" Emily blinked. "Nowhere, sorry." "You've been staring at that spot on the wall for like 10 minutes. Emily's mouth twisted. "I keep waiting for it to fall apart." She said it quietly, almost to herself. "Every time something good happens, I keep waiting for the part where it gets taken away. It's like my whole body doesn't know how to just let it be good. It keeps looking for the catch." Sam was quiet for a second. Then she pulled her chair closer. "Can I tell you something," Sam said, "about that morning on the sidewalk?" Emily looked at her. "I remember it," Sam said. "Not all of it, but pieces. I remember I couldn't breathe, and then I remember I was somewhere else, somewhere quiet. And it was actually it wasn't scary. It was peaceful. I remember thinking, so this is it, and it not even being that bad." Her voice went thick. "And then something started pulling me back, and it hurt. And I remember being kind of mad about it, like, no, I was fine, leave me alone. And then I heard this voice. Your voice, you were yelling. You said," Sam's eyes filled up. "You said, 'I don't even know your name, please don't do this.' And I remember thinking somebody who doesn't even know my name cares this much whether I live a stranger." Emily's throat closed. "You didn't know me," Sam said. "You had nothing. You were the one who needed saving. And you fought for me anyway, harder than my own body was fighting." A tear slid down her face. "So when you say you keep waiting for the catch, Emily, there's no catch. You want to know why my dad and 200 bikers are turning this whole town upside down for you? It's not charity. It's not pity. It's because you showed us who you are. And who you are is somebody worth turning the whole world upside down for. You just never had anybody around to tell you." Emily put her face in her hands. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "Any of it. Being taken care of. I forgot how. I don't even remember how it feels to just trust that somebody's going to still be there tomorrow." "Then we'll teach you," Sam said simply. "One day at a time, starting with tomorrow. I'll be here tomorrow, that's a promise. And the day after that. And you'll see. And after a while, your body will figure out it can stop looking for the catch." Emily lowered her hands and she looked at this girl. This girl she'd met dying on a sidewalk 24 hours ago, and something eased in her chest just a fraction. "You should be resting," Emily said, wiping her eyes, trying to laugh. "You died yesterday, you've got a heart thing, and you're over here taking care of me." "Yeah, well," Sam grinned, "guess we take care of each other now. That's kind of how it works." Ahem. Gerald Hans did exactly what Patricia said he'd do. He fought. The very next morning, before Patricia had even finished her coffee, her office got a call from Gerald's lawyer, a slick, expensive-sounding man who talked fast and threatened faster. The petition was baseless. The girl was a known runaway with a history of instability. Mr. Hans had done nothing but try to help a troubled teenager who repeatedly refused his care and fled his home. Any implication of wrongdoing was defamatory. They would be countersuing. Patricia listened to all of it, unbothered, doodling on her legal pad. "Are you finished?" she said when he wound down. "Good. Now, let me tell you what's actually going to happen. We've got a forensic accountant going through your client's transactions right now. We've got bank records under subpoena. And we've got a 17-year-old girl who's about to sit in front of a judge and describe the locks he put on the outside of her bedroom door." She smiled, though he couldn't see it. "So you go ahead and countersue, please. I would love nothing more than to put your client under oath. Have a nice day." She hung up and looked at Ryan, who'd come by to check in. "He's scared," Patricia said. "You can hear it. The louder they yell on day 2, the more scared they are." She tapped her pen. "But here's the thing, Ryan. He's not wrong about one thing. Right now on paper, it really is his word against hers. The video makes her sympathetic, but sympathy isn't evidence. We need the money trail. We need something hard, something a judge can't wave away. Because if this comes down to a he said, she said between a respectable-looking guardian and a homeless teenager, she's not homeless anymore." Ryan said quietly. You know what I mean. A judge who doesn't know her looking at two stories. Patricia shook her head. We need proof, and we need it before he figures out how to make it disappear. That afternoon, the forensic accountant called. Her name was Denise, and she was the best Patricia knew. And she'd been up half the night in the estate records, and her voice on the phone was carefully flat in the way of a person who has found something and is trying very hard to be professional about it. Patricia, you're going to want to sit down for this one. I'm sitting. The estate was worth a little over $400,000. Insurance payout plus the house sale after the mortgage. That's what came in. Denise took a breath. Over the last 11 months, it's been drained down to under $9,000. And Patricia, none of it went to the kid. I mean, none of it. No school, no medical, no clothes, no food that I can trace. What I've got instead is a new truck, a boat, 2 vacations, a whole lot of restaurant charges, and Denise's voice tightened, and about $60,000 moved out in cash, withdrawals and transfers to an account I haven't traced yet. He's been living large on a dead woman's life insurance while her kids slept outside. Patricia closed her eyes. Can you document all of it? Every dollar. It's all right here. He didn't even try to hide it, Patricia. He was so sure nobody would ever look he didn't bother. Denise let out a breath. This isn't a close case. This is a man who's going to prison. The only question is how long. Patricia hung up, and she looked at Ryan, and for once the sharp-edged lawyer was quiet. We got him, she said. We got him cold. Ryan didn't smile. His face had gone dark and still. New truck, a boat. While he couldn't finish. He turned and put both hands flat on the windowsill and stood there for a long moment, and Patricia let him have it because she'd been doing this long enough to know that sometimes the anger had to move through a person before anything else could. How do I tell her? Ryan finally said. How do I look that kid in the eye and tell her the guy who locked her in a room and threw her out on the street was buying a boat with her mom's money? You don't have to make it pretty, Patricia said gently. You just have to make it true. And then you have to tell her the other part. What other part? That it's over, Patricia said. That she won. That the money that's left is coming back to her, and the man who took it is going to answer for it, and she never has to be afraid of him again. She stood up. That's the part that matters, Ryan. Not the boat. The part where a kid who was told her whole life that she was powerless finds out she wasn't. That's the part she needs to hear. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Because Gerald Hans Corner did the thing that cornered men who have hurt children do. He came after Emily directly. It started small. A comment showed up under the viral video from an account with Gerald's lawyer's fingerprints all over it, though they couldn't prove it, claiming the homeless hero was actually a runaway with a history of lying and theft, that the family who'd taken her in was being conned, that people should be careful before they sent money to a girl who wasn't what she seemed. Then it wasn't just one comment. It was a dozen, then 100. A coordinated little poison dripped into the story to turn it. And because that's how these things go, some people believed it. The comments underneath started to split the way they always split. Something feels off about this. Anybody actually verify her story? Classic sob story scam. Sam saw it first scrolling on her phone at Carol's kitchen table, and her face went white. Emily, don't. She turned the phone face down. Don't look at the comments today. Okay, just don't. Emily's stomach dropped. Why, what is it? It's nothing, it's just internet garbage. Sam, Emily held out her hand. Let me see. Emily, he always said this, Emily said quietly. Her voice had gone strange and flat. Word for word, he said if I ever told anyone, they'd just believe him. That he'd make sure everyone knew I was a liar and a runaway, and nobody would ever take my side. She took the phone from Sam's hand, and she read, and her face didn't change, and somehow that was worse than if it had. See, there it is, exactly what he said. He's doing exactly what he always said he'd do. Sam grabbed her arm. It's not working. Look at the replies. People are defending you, way more than are believing him. But some believe him. Emily set the phone down carefully. Her hands had started to shake. Some always will. That's the whole trick, Sam. He doesn't have to convince everyone. He just has to put enough doubt out there that when it comes down to his word against mine, Somebody looks at me and thinks, well, maybe. She stood up from the table and her voice cracked. And who's easier to doubt, a guy with a house and a nice truck and a lawyer, or the homeless girl I know who I doubt? I've been the girl people doubt for a whole year. She walked to the window and stood with her back to Sam's arm, wrapped around herself, and Sam saw her shoulders start to shake and got up to go to her. Don't, Emily said. Not cruel, just breaking. Please, just give me a second. I need a second. Sam stopped, and she watched her friend stand there and shake, and she understood, maybe for the first time, that this was the real damage, not the hunger, not the cold, those you could fix with food and a warm bed. This was the thing Gerald had done that couldn't be fixed with a lawyer. He'd reached into Emily and rewired her to believe all the way down in her bones that the world would always take his side over hers. And a poisoned comment section was proving him right in real time. Sam pulled out her phone. She called her dad. Dad, she said, her voice tight. He's coming after her online, turning the comments against her. And it's Dad, it's working on her. Not the comments, him. He's making her feel like nobody's gonna believe her all over again. Her voice dropped. You need to come. And you need to bring, I don't know, you need to fix this. Ryan was quiet on the other end for a second. Put her on, he said. Sam crossed the room and held the phone out. It's my dad. He wants to talk to you. Emily didn't turn around. I don't want to. Emily, Sam said softly, please just listen to him. That's all. Slowly, Emily took the phone, held it to her ear, didn't say anything. Kid, Ryan's voice came through low and steady. You there? You don't gotta say anything. Just listen. A pause. I know what you're feeling right now. I know that man just reached across town and made you feel like a nobody all over again. And I know some strangers on the internet are helping him do it. And I know it feels exactly like everything he ever told you was true. Emily's eyes flooded. So here's what I need you to know, Ryan said. This afternoon, a forensic accountant finished going through the money. All of it. And Emily, we got him. Cold. Every dollar. The insurance, the house, all 400,000 of it. We can show exactly where every penny went, and none of it went to you, and a whole lot of it went to a boat and a truck and vacations. His voice hardened. You understand what that means. It means it's not your word against his anymore. It's the bank records against his. And bank records don't get called liars. Bank records don't care that you were homeless. Numbers don't doubt you, kid, and the numbers are on your side. Emily made a small broken sound. So let him poison the comments, Ryan said. Let him say whatever he wants. Every ugly thing he throws out there is just one more thing he's going to have to explain when he's sitting in that courtroom under oath staring at his own bank statements. A pause. He's not attacking you because he's winning, Emily. He's attacking you because he's drowning. This is what drowning looks like. Don't you dare mistake it for strength. Emily wiped her face. When she spoke, her voice was small, but it was steadier. You really got him, for real. For real, Denise doesn't make mistakes. We got him, cold kid. It's over. He just doesn't know it yet. Emily closed her eyes. And something shifted in her, not all at once, not a magic cure, but a small, real thing. 11 months of believing his voice over her own, and here was a different voice, a steady one, telling her the numbers were on her side, that she wasn't drowning, that he was. Okay, she whispered. You okay? No, Emily said honestly, but I will be, I think. A shaky breath. Ryan. Yeah, kid. Thank you for calling, instead of just letting me sit here believing him. Her voice cracked. Nobody's ever done that. Interrupted the bad voice. I didn't even know somebody could. There was a silence on the line. When Ryan spoke again, his voice wasn't quite steady. Get used to it, he said gruffly. Every single time that voice tells you a lie, kid, you call me or Sal or Carol or any one of 200 people who drop everything for you and will tell you the truth. Every time, for as long as it takes till you don't need us to anymore. A beat. That's a promise, and you know I don't break them. The hearing was set for 2 weeks out. Patricia said it would probably get delayed. Gerald's lawyer would file motions, ask for continuances, do everything possible to drag it out. That was the game. But she also said something that surprised Emily. He's going to want to settle, Patricia said, sitting at Carol's kitchen table with her files spread out, Emily and Ryan and Sam around her. Once his lawyer sees what we've got, he's going to come to us and offer to give the money back, what's left of it, and quietly disappear if we agree to drop the criminal referral. He'll want to make it go away. Emily frowned. And we just let him. Patricia looked at her carefully. That's actually your call, Emily, not mine, not Ryan's, yours. She folded her hands. Here's the honest picture. If we settle, you get the remaining money back faster, plus we can go after his other assets to make up some of what he spent. You'd be made mostly whole, and you'd avoid a long, ugly trial where you'd have to testify, where his lawyer would try to tear you apart on the stand in front of everyone. It'd be over. Clean. And if we don't settle, then we push for the criminal case, which means he potentially goes to prison. But it also means a trial, months of it, you on the witness stand, reliving all of it, no guarantee of how much money you'd recover, and a real fight. Patricia's voice was even. It's slower, harder, and more painful. And it's the only path where he actually pays for what he did to you instead of just paying back what he stole. The kitchen was quiet. Emily looked down at the table for a long time. So if I take the settlement, she said slowly, I get my money, my life's easier. It's over fast, but he just walks. He gives back what's left and goes and finds some other kid to do it too. Patricia didn't sugarcoat it. That's a real risk. Men like this don't usually stop. They just get more careful. Emily was silent. Ryan started to say something. Emily could see him wanting to tell her. Take the easy road, kid. You've suffered enough. Don't put yourself through a trial. And she loved him a little for it, but she held up her hand gently and he stopped. Can I say something? Emily said. And you all just let me get it out. They waited. For 11 months, Emily said. I thought I was the only one. Just me, just my bad luck, my broken family, my problem to survive. And I put my head down and I survived it alone because I thought that's all there was. She looked up. And then a girl fell down on a sidewalk. And I found out that when you help one person one time, when nobody's watching, it doesn't just help that one person. It started all of this, 200 people, lawyers, a whole family out of nowhere, because I stopped for one stranger. Her voice steadied. So I keep thinking, Emily said, what if I'm not the only kid Gerald's got his eye on? What if there's some other kid right now whose mom just died, who's about to get handed to him, and I could stop that? Me, the homeless girl nobody saw. I could be the reason it doesn't happen to somebody else. She swallowed. My mom taught me you don't walk away from someone in danger. And I've been thinking she just meant like that morning, PR. Somebody on the ground. Emily shook her head. But maybe she meant this too. Maybe walking away from the fight, taking the easy money, letting him go free to do it again. Maybe that's walking away from someone in danger too. Some kid I'll never meet. She looked at Patricia. I don't want the settlement, Emily said. I want the trial. I want him to answer for it. Not just to give the money back to answer. I'll get on the stand. I'll say all of it. I'm scared to death, but I'll do it. Her jaw set. Because I'm done being the kid he counted on to disappear. He bet everything on me being too small and too scared and too invisible to fight back. She wiped her eyes, but her voice didn't waver. He bet wrong, and I want to be the one who shows him just how wrong. The kitchen was dead silent. Patricia Vega sat back in her chair, and slowly a look came over her face that Emily hadn't seen from her before. Not the sharp professional respect from the first day, but something deeper, something that looked almost like awe. 22 years, Patricia said quietly. I've asked a lot of clients that question. Most of them take the money. Every single one of them takes the money. She started gathering her files. You're the first one who ever asked me who else he might hurt. She stood up. We're going to trial. And Emily, God help him. Ryan hadn't said a word. When Emily looked over at him, he had his hand over his mouth and his eyes were wet, and he took a second before he trusted himself to speak. Your mom, he finally said rough. She'd be... He shook his head, unable to finish it the way he wanted. She raised one hell of a kid, Emily. She really did. Emily's eyes filled. Yeah, she whispered. She did. And for the first time since her mother died, for the first time in 11 months of cold and hunger, and being nobody, Emily Carter felt her mother's presence in the room, not as grief, but as something stronger. As if every hard thing Diane Carter had ever taught her daughter at that kitchen table had been for exactly this. For a girl on a sidewalk, for a fight worth having, for the day her daughter would finally stand up straight and refuse to disappear. Across town, Gerald Hans's lawyer was drafting a settlement offer, certain the homeless girl would grab the money and run certain. Everyone always grabbed the money and ran. He had no idea the offer was already dead. He had no idea the girl had decided to fight, and he had no idea that this time she wasn't fighting alone. The settlement offer came 4 days later, exactly as Patricia predicted, and it was even bigger than she'd expected. He's offering to return the remaining funds, plus liquidate the truck and the boat oil, and sign over the proceeds, plus an additional $40,000 from an account we didn't even know he had. Patricia said, reading it over the phone while Emily and Sam sat at Carol's table with the speaker on. In exchange for a full release, and here's the part, an agreement not to pursue or cooperate with any criminal investigation. She paused. Emily, that's north of $200,000 today, in your account by the end of the week. No trial, no stand, no reliving any of it. Sam looked at Emily. Emily looked at the phone. For 1 second, one honest second, she felt the pull of it. $200,000. A future handed to her clean and immediate. No lawyer tearing her apart on a witness stand. No sitting 10 feet from Gerald's face. Just money and peace, and the whole nightmare over. It would have been so easy. Patricia, Emily said, the part about not cooperating with the criminal investigation. That's not about the money for him, is it? That's the whole point of the offer. There was a silence on the line, and then Patricia said with something like pride, no, it's not about the money. He'd pay double to keep himself out of a courtroom. The money he doesn't care about, he can make more. What he's buying with all of this is his freedom. That offer is a scared man trying to purchase his way out of prison. Then no, Emily said. Simple. Immediate. The answer's no. I already decided. We go to trial. You're sure? 200,000, Emily. You could... I'm sure. Emily's voice didn't shake this time. He's not buying his way out. Not with my mom's money. Not so he can go do it to the next kid. Tell his lawyer no. Tell him we'll see him in court. Patricia let out a breath that was almost a laugh. You're going to be a hell of a witness, you know that. But it wasn't going to be that simple. Because when the offer was refused, Gerald Hans understood finally and completely that the homeless girl he'd bet his whole plan on was not going to disappear, was not going to fold, was not going to take the money and vanish the way everyone always did. And a cornered man who can't buy his way out does the only thing left to him. He fights dirtier. The first sign came 2 days before the hearing. Carol answered a knock at her door in the middle of the afternoon and found a man standing on her porch, clean-cut, polite, a lanyard around his neck. He said he was from Child Protective Services. He said there'd been a report. He said he needed to speak with Emily Carter about concerns regarding her current living situation and the fitness of the adults she'd attached herself to. Carol, God bless her, did not let him pass the doorway. You got a name and a card, she said, arms folded, because I'm going to call your office and confirm you're who you say you are before that girl talks to anybody. She's had about enough of adults showing up saying they're here to help. The man's smile tightened just slightly. He handed over a card. Of course, but I would encourage you not to obstruct. That reflects poorly, Mrs. It reflects like a woman who's watched this child get lied to by every official-looking adult in her life, Carol said. You wait right there. She shut the door in his face and she called Ryan, and Ryan called Patricia, and within 20 minutes the whole thing was unraveling because the report, it turned out, had been filed anonymously, and it accused the Walker family and an outlaw motorcycle gang of grooming a vulnerable minor for exploitation. And it had Gerald's lawyer's fingerprints all over it, and it was designed to do one thing: get Emily removed from the only safe place she'd found and dropped back into the system right before she could testify. Emily, listening from the kitchen, went very still when she understood. He's trying to take me away from you, she said quietly. Before the hearing, so I can't... He's trying, Ryan said, and his voice had gone dangerous. He's not gonna. But Emily was already spiraling, that old panic clawing up her throat, because this was the exact shape of the thing she'd always feared. Not violence, not even the money, the system, the paperwork, The official-looking men who could pick her up and move her around and put her wherever they wanted, and who would always believe the adult with the lanyard over the kid with nothing. "He can do it," she said, and her voice was climbing. That's the thing that's the thing he always knew. He can make a call and file a paper, and they'll come take me. And it doesn't matter what's true, it matters what the paper says, and the paper says I'm a runaway and you're a and Emily, Sam grabbed both her hands. "Emily, look at me. Breathe. Look at me." "You don't get it, Sam. They can just take me." "They can't." A new voice. Everyone turned. Patricia had let herself in, phone still in hand, and she crossed the kitchen and knelt down in front of Emily's chair so they were eye to eye. "Listen to me," Patricia said. "I know that man just made you feel like the ground could open up under you again. I know. That's exactly what he wanted. So let me tell you what's actually true." She held up her phone. "That report is anonymous, unsubstantiated, and it's going to fall apart the second anyone real looks at it. And more than that, I already called the county. I know the supervisor who handles these. And you know what I told her?" Emily shook her head barely. "I told her the truth," Patricia said, "that there's a hearing in 2 days where a court is going to hear evidence that this child's actual guardian drained her dead mother's estate and put her on the street. And that the same guardian appears to be the source of a last-minute, anonymous report designed to interfere with that hearing. And that if her office removes this child on the basis of a fabricated complaint 48 hours before that guardian faces a judge, that is going to be a very, very bad look for the county." Patricia's eyes were steel. She agreed. "There's no removal, Emily. There's not going to be one. The man who came to Carol's door is not coming back. I've made sure of it." Emily stared at her. "He tried to use the system against me," she said slowly, "and you used it back." "That's exactly what happened," Patricia said. "Here's the thing that man never understood, Emily. The system isn't automatically his. It just felt that way to you because you never had anyone who knew how to work it on your side. Well," she stood up, "now you do, and I'm very, very good at my job." Emily let out a breath that shook on the way out, and then, surprising herself, she laughed, small and wet and disbelieving. "He keeps doing it," she said. "Every time he pushes it, it just makes it worse for him. The comments, the settlement, now this, every single thing he tries, because he's playing a game he already lost," Patricia said. "He just hasn't accepted it yet. Men like Gerald can't imagine losing to a kid they wrote off as nothing. So they keep doubling down, and every time they double down, they hand us another gift." She gathered her bag. "By the time we get to that hearing, he's not going to have a single card left to play, and he's going to have to sit there and watch it all come down." But Patricia was wrong about one thing. Gerald Hans had one card left, and it was the ugliest one of all. The night before the hearing, Emily couldn't sleep. She'd been staying at Carol's for almost 2 weeks now, and the room had stopped feeling temporary. There were clothes in the drawers that were actually hers, bought with Ryan's card because he'd insisted over her protest that a girl needed more than what she could fit in a backpack. She'd started sleeping without checking the lock 3 times. Started expecting breakfast in the morning. Started against every instinct she owned to believe that maybe this time the good thing was real. But tonight the old fear was back, sitting on her chest, and around 11, she gave up on sleep and padded out to the kitchen for water, and she found Ryan sitting at the table in the dark. He wasn't surprised to see her. He'd been waiting, she realized, maybe for hours. "Couldn't sleep either," she said. "Nah." He nudged out the chair beside him with his boot. "Sit with me a minute." She sat. For a while, neither of them said anything, and it was a comfortable kind of quiet, the kind Emily hadn't known she'd been starving for. "You scared about tomorrow?" Ryan finally asked. "Yeah." No point lying to him. She'd stopped being able to lie to Ryan somewhere in the last 2 weeks. "I keep thinking about seeing his face. I haven't seen him since I climbed out that window. And tomorrow I have to sit in a room with him and say all of it out loud with him right there looking at me." Her hands twisted on the table. "What if I freeze? What if I get up there and he looks at me and I'm 16 again and I can't? What if I just freeze?" Ryan was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something?" he said, "about fear. Something I learned a long time ago, back when I was younger than you'd think and dumber than I'd like to admit." She nodded. "Fear's not the enemy," Ryan said. "Everybody thinks it is. They think brave means not being scared. That's garbage. I've never once in my life done a brave thing without being scared to death first. He turned his coffee cup slowly in his hands. Brave isn't the absence of fear, kid. Brave is being scared out of your mind and doing the thing anyway. That's it. That's the whole secret. He looked at her. You already know this. You knew it that morning on the sidewalk. You think you weren't scared kneeling on that ice with a dying girl and 60 people watching. You were terrified. You did it anyway. That's not luck. That's who you are. Emily's throat tightened. So tomorrow, Ryan said, you're going to walk in that room and you're going to be scared and you're going to see his face, and for 1 second, it's going to feel like you're 16 again and trapped. And then you're going to remember that you're not. He reached over and put his hand over hers. You're not trapped anymore, Emily. There's a difference between how it felt and what's true. It's going to feel like you're alone up there. But you're going to look out and I'm going to be in the second row. And Sam and Carol and Stone. And behind them, that whole courtroom's going to be full of leather because every brother who can fit is going to be there. You will not be able to look anywhere in that room without seeing somebody who'd walk through fire for you. His voice went rough. You've never had that. Not once in a year. Tomorrow you're going to have it in a way you can see with your own 2 eyes. And I want you to lean on it. You hear me? Don't you dare try to be strong alone tomorrow. You've been strong alone long enough. Tomorrow you let us hold you up. Emily couldn't speak. She'd spent 11 months believing all the way down that being alone was just a permanent fact of her life, that the aloneness was who she was. And here was this man in the dark telling her that tomorrow, in the scariest room she'd ever walk into, she'd be surrounded. Why does it? Her voice broke. She tried again. Why does it still scare me? The good stuff, you'd think after 2 weeks, but every morning I still wake up sure it's going to be wrong. Sure, you're all going to realize I'm not worth it and just disappear. Why can't I make it stop? Ryan's face softened into something almost unbearably gentle. Because he had you for 11 months and we've only had you for 2 weeks, he said simply. That's all it is, kid. He spent a year teaching you that you're nobody and everybody leaves. 2 weeks doesn't undo a year, but 2 years will, and 10 years will, and 30. He squeezed her hand. You're not going to wake up one morning magically fixed. That's not how it works. What's going to happen is we're just going to keep showing up, day after day after day. And one day I can't tell you when you're going to wake up and reach for that fear out of habit, and it's not going to be there anymore. Because we'll have been here so long your body finally believes it. That's the only cure there is. Time and people who don't leave. He held her eyes. And I'm not going anywhere. None of us are. So it's just a matter of time now, Emily. That's all. Just time. Emily put her head down on the table and cried, and Ryan sat with her, his hand steady on her back, and he didn't say another word because there wasn't another word that needed saying. Some things you don't fix with talk. You fix them by staying. And Ryan Walker had every intention of staying. The courtroom was full. Patricia had warned them it might be given the video, but nobody was ready for what it actually was. The gallery packed wall to wall, and more than half of it leather. Word had gone out through the club, and they'd come from 3 states' writers Emily had never met, filling row after row. And when she walked in behind Patricia, with her legs shaking, the first thing she saw was a sea of faces that had all turned to look at her, and not one of them was looking at her with pity. They were looking at her like she was one of theirs. Stone was in the front row. He gave her one small nod. Ryan and Sam and Carol sat right behind the bar, close enough to touch. And as Emily made her way to the table, something happened that she would carry with her for the rest of her life. The writers, one by one as she passed, stood up. Not all at once, just quietly getting to their feet, a wave of standing that followed her all the way to the front, 200 people rising for a girl who'd spent a year being stepped over. Emily's eyes were streaming before she even sat down. And then she saw him. Gerald Hahn sat at the defense table in a suit that cost more than everything Emily had owned in the last year combined. And for one terrible second, it happened exactly like she'd feared she was 16 again, and small, and the man across the room owned every door in her life. Then he made his mistake. He looked at her, and he smiled. A small, private, contemptuous little smile. The smile of a man who'd looked at a homeless girl for a year and seen nothing but a problem that would solve itself. The smile said, "You're still nobody. All these people, all this noise, and underneath it, you're still the same. Nothing you always were, and we both know it. And something in Emily at that smile went cold and clear and still. Because he was wrong. She could feel exactly how wrong he was, feel it in the 200 people at her back, feel it in Ryan's presence, 2 rows behind her, feel it in a way she hadn't been able to feel 2 weeks ago. The smile was supposed to shrink her, and instead it did the opposite. It reminded her exactly who she was fighting and exactly what he'd counted on and exactly how badly she wanted to prove him wrong. The fear didn't leave, but it stopped running the show. Emily looked back at Gerald Hans and she did not look away. And slowly, deliberately, she let him see that she wasn't 16 anymore, and she wasn't trapped, and she wasn't alone, and she was not going to disappear. His smile faltered. Good, Emily thought. Now you're starting to understand. So Patricia was surgical. She laid it out piece by piece, and there was nothing Gerald's expensive lawyer could do but object and get overruled because Patricia wasn't offering opinions. She was offering documents. The estate valuation. $400,000 in. The bank records, the withdrawals, the truck, the boat, the vacations. Denise took the stand and walked the judge through every dollar flat and factual and devastating. And by the time she was done, the number that hung over the courtroom was impossible to argue with, over $400,000 of a dead woman's money and not 1 cent of it spent on the child it was meant for. Then Patricia called Emily. The walk to the stand was the longest of her life. She could feel Gerald watching her. She could feel everyone watching her. And when she sat down and looked out, it was exactly like Ryan had promised, a wall of people who loved her, and Ryan in the second row, with his eyes locked on hers, and she took a breath and she began. She told it all. The window she climbed out of. The locks on the outside of the doors. The way Sweetheart had turned into other things. The $40, the stairwells, the church basement, the cold. She told it plainly without drama because the truth didn't need any, and the courtroom was so silent you could hear it breathing. And then Gerald's lawyer stood up to cross-examine her, and this was the moment Patricia had warned her about, the moment he'd try to tear her apart. Ms. Carter, he began smoothly, isn't it true that you have a documented history of running away, that you're described in reports your own guardian filed as troubled and unstable? Reports he filed, Emily said. Yeah, he filed those. So you don't dispute that you're a runaway. I ran away from a man who locked me in a room and stole my dead mom's money, Emily said, and her voice didn't shake. If that makes me a runaway, then okay. I'm a runaway, but you should be careful using that word like it's an accusation. She looked at the lawyer, then passed him at Gerald. Because the only reason I had to run is sitting right there. The lawyer pressed, he pushed, he tried every angle. Tried to make her contradict herself, tried to make her look unstable, tried to make her angry. And Emily, the girl who'd survived 11 months alone, who'd learned to stay calm when the world got loud, didn't give him a single thing. Every question he threw, she answered simple and true, and every answer just dug the hole deeper, because the truth was on her side and you can't cross-examine the truth into a lie. Finally running out of room, he made the mistake Patricia had been waiting for. Ms. Carter, he said, a note of desperation creeping in. Isn't it possible that you've simply attached yourself to a wealthy, sympathetic family and constructed a story that guarantees their support? Isn't it convenient that a homeless girl suddenly has a mansion's worth of allies and a claim to hundreds of thousands of dollars? The courtroom went still. And Emily, quiet, steady. Emily looked at him for a long moment. You want to know what's convenient? She said. It would have been real convenient for me to take the settlement. She let that sit. Your client offered me over $200,000 4 days ago. Cash. This week. All I had to do was agree not to help put him in prison. No trial, no sitting here, no you asking me questions like this. She looked right at Gerald, and I said no. The lawyer's face changed. I turned down $200,000, Emily said, so that I could sit in this chair and make sure he can't do this to another kid. So don't you dare tell me I'm in it for the money. If I wanted the easy money, I'd be home right now. I'm here because it's not about the money. It was never about the money. It's about him answering for what he did. Her voice cracked just once, but she didn't stop. My mom taught me you don't walk away from someone in danger. There's some kid out there who could be next. I'm not walking away from them. even if it costs me, especially if it costs me. The lawyer stood there with nothing left to say. He'd walked right into it. He'd handed her the moment. And Patricia at the table didn't even try to hide her smile, because the whole courtroom had just watched a homeless teenager turn down a fortune to protect a child she'd never meet. And there was not a single person in that room, not the judge, not the gallery, not even Gerald's own lawyer, who doubted her anymore. No further questions, the lawyer said quietly and sat down. Gerald Hans did not smile now. The judge did not need long. She removed Gerald Hans as guardian effective immediately. She ordered every recoverable dollar returned, plus the liquidation of the truck, the boat, and every asset traceable to the estate. She referred the entire matter to the district attorney for criminal prosecution, and she stated on the record in a voice cold enough to frost the windows that in her years on the bench, she had rarely seen a more calculated and cowardly exploitation of a vulnerable child, and that she intended to make sure the criminal court understood exactly how she viewed it. And then she looked at Emily, and her voice changed. Ms. Carter, to the judge, said, "I want to say something to you off the record if the reporter will indulge me." She set down her pen. "In this job, I see the worst of what people do to each other. Day after day, it's easy to lose faith. And then once in a great while, someone comes through my courtroom who reminds me why any of it matters." She paused. "You were failed by nearly every adult who was supposed to protect you. And instead of letting that turn you hard, you knelt down on a frozen sidewalk and saved a stranger's life. And then you turned down a fortune to protect children you'll never meet." Her voice softened. "You are without question the most remarkable young person to come through this courtroom in a very long time. And I have no doubt whatsoever that your mother would be proud beyond words. This court is adjourned." The gavel came down, and the courtroom, the packed, leather-filled, standing-room-only courtroom, erupted. 200 people were on their feet, and this time it wasn't quiet. This time it was a roar, a wall of sound riders and strangers, and Carol sobbing into a tissue, and Sam screaming Emily's name, and Ryan pushing through the crowd, past the bar, reaching her before she'd even fully stood up and pulling her into his arms and holding on so tight her feet nearly left the ground. "You did it?" he said into her hair, and his voice was completely wrecked. "You did it, kid. You did it. It's over. You hear me? It's over. He can never touch you again." Emily clung to him and sobbed, and over his shoulder she saw Gerald Hans being led out a side door, and for 1 second their eyes met, and there was nothing on his face now. No contempt, no smile, nothing but the hollow, disbelieving look of a man who had bet everything on a girl being nobody, and had just watched the whole world stand up and prove him wrong. Then he was gone. And Emily turned away from the door he'd disappeared through, and she looked at the people crowded around her. Ryan and Sam and Carol and Stone, and 200 faces she was only just beginning to know, and she understood finally all the way down the things she'd been too scared to believe for 2 weeks. They hadn't come because they pitied her. They hadn't come because they owed her. They'd come because somewhere in the last 2 weeks, without her even noticing it happen, she had stopped being the girl nobody saw and become somebody with a family. Gerald Hans pleaded guilty 11 weeks later. His lawyer had looked at the bank records and the judge's referral and the video with, by then, over 8 million views, and he'd done the math and told his client the truth. There was no winning this. A trial would only make it worse. Better to plead take the deal and hope for mercy. There wasn't much. The day the sentence came down, Emily sat in the courtroom again, smaller. This time, no crowd, just her and Ryan and Patricia, and she listened as the judge handed Gerald 6 years in state prison, plus full restitution of every dollar he could not prove he'd spent on her, which was every dollar. And when they let him out this time, he didn't look at her at all. He just stared at the floor, a smaller man than the one who'd smiled at her across a courtroom, a man who'd finally understood that the girl he'd thrown away had been the one thing capable of destroying him. Emily watched him go, and she waited to feel something, triumph maybe, or the satisfaction she'd imagined all those cold nights. But mostly what she felt was quiet. "You okay?" Ryan asked low beside her. Emily thought about it. "Yeah," she said slowly. "I thought I'd feel like I don't know, like I won something. But it's not like that. It's more like," she searched for it, "like I put something down, something I'd been carrying so long I forgot it was heavy, and now I get to walk around without it." Ryan put his arm around her shoulders. "That's exactly what it is, kid," he said. "That's exactly what it is. Patricia gathered her files and looked at Emily with the expression she'd worn since that day on the stand, a kind of settled respect. "The restitution money's going into a trust," she said. "Yours in your name, and nobody touches it but you when you turn 18. Every dollar your mother left you. It came back." She paused. "She wanted you to have a start, Emily. She's still giving it to you. Just took a longer road than she planned." Emily's eyes filled and she nodded, unable to speak. The road back had been long, but she was on it now, and this time nobody had locked the doors. She moved in with those Walkers for good that spring. It hadn't been a dramatic decision. It had just quietly become true, the way the most important things sometimes do. She'd been staying at Carol's and then more and more at Ryan's in the spare room next to Sam's. And one night at dinner, Ryan set down his fork and said in his gruff way, "You know this is home now, right? You're not a guest here. This is your house. I want you to hear me say it out loud." And Sam had grinned and said, "About time." And Emily had gotten up from the table and hugged Ryan from behind her arms around his neck. And that had been that. She had a room that was hers. A door with a lock on the inside that she stopped needing to check. A sister, because that was what Sam had become. No qualifiers, no explanations, just sisters sleeping 10 feet away. And a father of a kind, a big man in a leather vest who had decided the morning his daughter came back from the dead that the girl who saved her would never be cold or hungry or alone again as long as he was breathing. The nightmares faded, slowly, just like Ryan said they would. There were still hard nights she woke up sure it was all gone, sure she was back in the stairwell, sure she'd imagined the whole thing. But on those nights, she'd walk down the hall and find a light still on, because somebody in that house was always awake, always willing to sit with her at the kitchen table until the fear passed. And morning by morning, month by month, the reaching for the fear got weaker. Until one day, months in, Emily woke up and lay there a while and realized she hadn't braced for anything at all. That was the morning she knew, really knew, that she was home. She went back to school in the fall. She was behind a year of the streets had cost her, but she caught up fast because she'd always been sharp, and because, for the first time in her life, she had a warm house and food and people who checked her homework and asked about her day. Her grades climbed, her teachers noticed her, and somewhere in the middle of it all, quietly without fanfare, Emily Carter started to have something she hadn't let herself have in almost 2 years. A future. She knew what she wanted. She'd known it really since she was a little girl at a kitchen table watching her mother's hands show her where to press. She wanted to be the one who knew what to do, the one who ran toward the person on the ground instead of away, the one who stopped. She wanted to be an EMT, like her mom. "You sure?" Sam asked her once the two of them sprawled on Emily's bed doing homework. "It's a lot of school, and it's hard. You'd see people on the worst day of their lives all the time." "That's the point," Emily said. "Somebody has to be there on the worst day. Somebody has to be the one who doesn't look away." She was quiet a second. "There were 60 people on that sidewalk, Sam, 60, and they all just filmed. And I keep thinking about how if I'd walked past two, if I'd been one more person who didn't stop, you wouldn't be here. You'd just be a video somebody posted. And I can't," her voice caught, "I can't stand the thought of how many people are lying on sidewalks somewhere with a whole crowd around them and nobody stopping. I want to be the one who stops for the rest of my life. I want that to be my whole job." Sam looked at her for a long moment. Then she reached over and squeezed her hand. "Your mom would be so proud of you," she said. "You know that, right? Ryan says that too. Because it's true." Emily smiled small and real. "Yeah," she said softly. "I think it is." The years went faster than she expected. She graduated high school. The whole club came filling the back rows of the auditorium in leather. And when they called her name, Emily Carter, the roar that went up made the principal jump and made Emily laugh through her tears as she crossed the stage. She started her EMT training that same summer, working harder than she'd ever worked at anything. And Ryan drove her to her first day and sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes after she went in, just because he couldn't quite make himself leave. She was good at it. Of course she was good at it. She'd been training her whole life in a way, the calm under pressure, the refusal to look away, the thing her mother had put in her at a kitchen table. When the other students froze, Emily moved. When a scenario got chaotic, Emily got quiet and clear. Her instructor pulled her aside after the first month and said, "Carter, I don't know where you learned to keep your head like that, but it's not something I can teach. You've either got it or you don't. You've got it." "My mom had it," Emily told him. "She was an EMT." "Then she'd be proud," the instructor said. "You're going to be one of the good ones." She was 21 the night it came full circle. She'd been a working paramedic for almost 2 years by then, and she was good, one of the best young medics in the county, the kind of calm, steady hand that the veteran drivers wanted on their rig. And on a cold night in January, almost exactly 4 years after a homeless girl knelt on a frozen sidewalk, Emily Carter's ambulance got a call. Teenage girl, collapsed outside a coffee shop. Bystander CPR in progress. Downtown Maple Street. Emily's hands went still on the equipment for just 1 second. The same street, the same corner, the same terrible familiar shape of it. And for a heartbeat, she was 17 again, starving and invisible, running across the ice toward a stranger nobody else would touch. Then she was herself again, 21, trained steady, and the ambulance was already moving, and she was moving with it. They came around the corner, lights flashing, and there it was, a small crowd on the sidewalk. And in the middle of it, a girl on the ground, and over her, someone pumping her chest, refusing to stop. Emily was out of the rig before it fully stopped. "Paramedic coming through, let me in." She dropped to her knees beside the fallen girl, and across the body, still doing compressions, was a kid maybe 14, skinny, scared to death, arms shaking with exhaustion. A kid who'd clearly been at it too long. A kid who'd been the only one to move. "You're doing great," Emily told him, taking over the compressions in one smooth motion, her hands finding the spot without thinking. "You hear me? You did great. You kept her going. I've got her now. What's your name?" Danny," the kid stammered. Is she gonna?" "You kept her alive, Danny," Emily said, working steady calm. "You were the only one who moved, weren't you? Everybody else just watched." The kid nodded, tears streaking his face. "Nobody else would." "I know," Emily said. "I know exactly how that feels." And under her hands, the girl's heart, which the boy had kept beating with everything he had kicked and caught, and started again on its own. "She's back," Emily breathed. "She's back. Danny, look. You did that. You hear me. You didn't wait. You didn't film. You didn't look away. You stopped. You're the reason she's alive." The kid broke down, completely sobbing with relief, and as the other medics loaded the girl and Emily helped lift the stretcher, she caught the boy by the shoulder and made him look at her. "Listen to me," she said. "I need you to remember tonight for the rest of your life, not because it was scary, because of what you did. You were the only person in this whole crowd who was real. You understand that means something. That means something huge. Don't you ever let anybody tell you different." Danny stared at her. "How do you sound like you..." 4 years ago," Emily said quietly, "I was standing right about where you're standing, right on this street, and I saved a girl nobody else would touch, and it changed my whole life." She squeezed his shoulder. "Someday I'll tell you the whole thing. For now, just know this. You did the bravest thing a person can do, and I'm proud of you. A total stranger, and I'm proud of you." And she climbed into the back of the ambulance beside the girl she'd helped bring back, and the doors closed, and they were gone into the night. She never told Danny her whole story. She didn't need to. But she thought about him for years, and she hoped wherever he ended up, he remembered that a paramedic once knelt beside him on the worst night of his life and told him he mattered. Because Emily knew better than anyone alive what one of those moments could do. Ryan Walker walked her down the aisle when she got married at 26 to a firefighter named Marcus, who understood the calling in her because he shared it. He wasn't her father by blood. They both knew it. It didn't matter even a little. When she'd asked him, sitting at the same kitchen table where he'd told her she was home, her voice shaking, "Ryan, will you? I don't have anybody else to... Will you walk me down?" He hadn't even let her finish. He just stood up and pulled her into his arms and said, "I've been waiting 9 years for you to ask me that, kid." And they'd both cried like fools. Sam was her maid of honor, of course. They were sisters by then, and every way that counted had been for years, ever since a homeless girl brought a dying one back on a frozen sidewalk. Carol did the flowers. Stone gave a toast that started as a joke and ended with the whole room in tears. And the back rows of the church were full of leather, gray-bearded, now some of them a little slower than they'd been the night they filled a whole street with thunder, but every one of them there. Every one of them family. And when the pastor asked who gave this woman to be married, Ryan Walker's voice rang out strong and sure and thick with everything he'd carried for 9 years. Her mother and I do. Because Diane Carter was in that room too. She always was. In her daughter's hands and her daughter's calling, and the lessons she'd planted at a kitchen table that had grown into a whole life. Emily felt her there the way she'd felt her in the courtroom, the way she felt her on every call, not as grief anymore, but as a presence walking beside her still. Emily Carter became one of the best paramedics the county ever had. She spent her life doing exactly what she'd told Sam she would, being the one who stops, being the one who runs toward the person on the ground. In 15 years on the job, she pulled hundreds of people back across the line, and she never once, not one single time, walked past someone who needed her. She couldn't. It wasn't in her anymore if it ever had been. And she had a particular gift, everyone said, for the invisible ones, the homeless, the forgotten, the people other medics rushed through. Emily would kneel down in the gutter beside a person the whole world had written off, and she would take their hand, and she would look them in the eye, and she would treat them like they were the most important person in the world, because she knew better than anyone what it did to a human being to be seen. Just once. By just one person who didn't look away. She started a program eventually, a fund. It quietly did for other kids what a leather-clad brotherhood had once done for her, found the ones falling through the cracks, the ones nobody was coming for, and made sure somebody came. She never talked about it much. She never wanted the credit. She'd learned a long time ago from her mother that the help that counts most is the help you give when nobody's watching. But everyone who knew the story knew where it came from. It came from a freezing morning and a girl on the ground and a homeless teenager with nothing left in the world who ran across the ice anyway because her mother had taught her that you never ever walk away from someone in danger. That single choice made by a girl the whole town had decided didn't matter had rippled outward across decades and touched more lives than anyone could ever count. It saved Samantha. It gave Emily a family. It put a thief in prison. It protected children she'd never meet. It made a paramedic who saved hundreds, who started a fund that saved hundreds more, who knelt in 1,000 gutters and made 1,000 forgotten people feel, however briefly, that they mattered. All of it from one girl choosing to stop. Emily understood that at the end. She'd had a long time to think about it, a long, good life full of the people who'd chosen to stay. And if you'd asked her near the end of it what she'd learned from the streets, from the ground, from the brotherhood, from a mother gone too soon, she'd have told you it was the simplest thing in the world. Heroes don't always look the way you expect. Sometimes a hero is a homeless girl in worn-out shoes. Sometimes a hero is a scared boy who won't stop pressing. Sometimes a hero is 200 bikers who fill a street with thunder for a child they've never met. And sometimes changing the entire world begins with just one person. One tired, hungry, forgotten person that everybody else walked past, deciding to stop, kneel down, and refuse to look away. Emily Carter was that person once on the coldest morning of her life. And she spent every day that followed proving that the world had been wrong about her all along. She was never nobody. She was the one who stopped.